Wow, time slips right by me. Trying to do 3 videos today. This is my second, so I did one. It was for Patreon. It was one of the Florida videos. I need to address this. I keep seeing people go like, "Oh, you have Patreon now, so like you forgot about your YouTube people. We're peasants. We're not worthy of you because you have it." It's like, dude, no. You got to remember this. Like a year ago, more than a year ago now, I got out of prison. I didn't have shit, you know. I mean, that's my own fault. I got out, I got a car, and then I went out and I worked normal jobs. And basically, when Seth Ferrante got me on Out Profits, I got a big enough, I got big enough exposure where I could start my own channel, and I started doing this as a job. But YouTube hardly monetizes my stuff. Like if you went down the list and you saw how many videos I'm actually making like full monetization on, it's not that much. I make money off royalties. I donate all the paperback money. Right now I'm donating all the Kindle money. I keep the audiobook. My album I keep, but as soon as the Drug Stories for Truckers is out on iTunes and Spotify, that's all going towards my Narcan initiative. Um, I believe in doing charitable stuff. I've always been like that. In the beginning, I used to ask everybody for donations. I'd be like, hit my GoFundMe. I'd come up with things like the blotter, the album, different ways to support myself. It's not cheap living in LA. My girl is a full-time mom. She doesn't work, so it's all on me, which is fine. But you guys used to give me a lot of shit for asking for donations. And then finally, the following got big enough where I could go on Patreon and I could give consistent content every day. There's a lot of bonus stuff. And I still put stuff on YouTube, just not every day. I mean, people on Patreon are paying for early access. That's one of the things that they pay for. They pay for extra content. So there's like there's other story series on there that I don't put on here. It's like interviews with my friends, with Karina. There's stuff on there that's exclusive. Plus there's stuff from the documentary. It's not that I'm not appreciative of YouTube. I am, of course I am. I would never have Patreon without YouTube, but you really got to understand, like I have a kid and this is what I do now for a living. And now that the COVID-19 is coming, it has happened and we're on quarantine, it has slowed the documentary being released. That was supposed to come out in May, you know? So, and I was anticipating, okay, I'll do like my life story. And when the documentary comes out, maybe I'll transition into a podcast. People are like, oh, get to the prison shit. I'm not a prison channel. I don't want to be a prison channel. I think prison is fucking whack. I hate it. I hate that whole culture. I don't want anything to do with it. I realized that going to prison, I've been there 3 times, so it's a part of my life story. But you got to look at, like, the point of my channel is I tell my entire life story in like from beginning to end, and we're pretty far along in it, but there's still tons of other story series that I haven't done. I really come on, if you're giving me shit because I've gone to a platform where I'm actually like, I'm supporting myself and then some, like now we actually have savings, I'm providing my kid a good life. Like if you can't respect that or understand why I'm doing that, that says a lot more about you than it does about me. And I still put stuff on YouTube, maybe it's not, it's like every few days I'm dropping something. Sometimes it's every day. On Patreon, it's more consistent because that's what people pay for. There has to be a reason that people pay, and people go, "Whoa, oh, these funny games you're playing. Oh, you're gonna lose subscribers." I don't give a fuck. It's like I'm doing fine. I've never been materialistic. I give away more money than I spend. I don't ever buy shit. I don't buy like new clothes or anything. Anything I wear, people give me, or like or like I get a present, or people send me boxes of stuff. Clothing companies do. Got a friend Joe that sends me boxes of cool stuff all the time. Got multiple people that are looking out for me. It's like I don't spend a lot of money on myself. I spend money on my child, and then I do charitable stuff. Doing the Narcan thing now, and you know, as ridiculous as it is, that's considered a prescription drug. So now I have to have an attorney because we have to find out the legality for different states. I have you guys on the list, anyone that signed up. There's a capacity for 500. That's the first batch. Like once that list, people are like, well, it's not like it's over capacitated now. I'm going to send those 500 out first, and then I'll let you guys know when I put the list out again. But that's why, that's why I do Patreon. And it seems like it's like pissing a lot of people off. It's like, I'm still going to put stories on Patreon. We're still going to continue. We're going to get to the prison stories at some point, and I'm still going to put them on here. I'm seriously in a position now where I could just be like, okay, I don't need YouTube anymore. But obviously I appreciate the people that got me in the position that I'm in now. So I don't know. I just felt like addressing it because people give me a lot of shit. It's like when I was asking for, oh, get a job, bum, cut your hair, bitch. Cut my hair, made a job out of this. Patreon's my job, and I'm proud to say that. I got out of prison with nothing and I made something out of nothing, and I'm proud of that. And I support my child. I'm a solid dad. I'm a good dad. Tell us about when you put in work I was never a good convict. I'm a drug addict. My whole life story is I'm a dope fiend. I was not a good prisoner. I'm a fucking dope fiend. That's it. I'm a dope fiend that happened to go to prison a few times. That's it. That was a result of my addiction. So if anything, my story should be from my addiction, what it did to me, all the dirtbag shit that I did. I mean, it's basically a confessional. I'm like, yo, let me tell you a secret. Ever heard of a BFCL? Anyway, so, I mean, that's it. I do not like prison. The more, prison. It's like, dude, there's plenty of channels that do that. There's not a lot of channels where people tell their life stories and then, oh, your shit's falling off, your content. Oh, man. Oh, it gives me chills. It's just not as good as it used to be. And watch something else. Go watch Tiger King or whatever the fuck people are watching. I don't know. I mean, those of you that like me and then those of you that just want to complain. Sorry. Like, comment, do whatever the fucking doesn't matter. Shit's in the pinned comments and the description. And what's the other? Oh yeah. I got Cameo. I got accept Mickey Avalon. Shout out to you, Mickey. Got me hooked up with the nice folks at the nice, I don't even know the name of it, at Cameo, which is like where celebrities can do custom videos, but I'm just going to show my dick. It's like you pay $20 and then I just stand up and I show my little root beer dick and look at that guy. That guy's a bitch. No, I do like, if it's like someone's birthday, I'll be like, what's up? I'm a hot tan guy, so are you. Give me $20. $20 for him. If you guys want to do that. That money I'm going to donate as well to the Narcan thing. And I'm going to be doing more raffles with Mickey. I'm going to do raffles with Sinister. Speaking of which, the last raffle, there's one thing that I've not, that for some reason we still have, because now I have an assistant. So if you guys haven't gotten if there's anything you've ever ordered you haven't gotten, I'm pretty sure I caught up with everybody, but once in a while someone will be like, I've emailed you 75 times now and I feel like I might be bugging you. You're not bugging me. If I owe you anything, I'll give it to you. But there's a sweatshirt, a Sinister Monopoly sweatshirt. I was going to send it. The guy said, no, I want Sinister to sign it. I got him to sign it. We don't have the address. I thought that we sent that. I don't know who won that. I guess I could always go back and watch the video, which I will do. But if you know, comment, remind me, and I will send it. We have that signed by him. Yeah. So we'll be doing more raffles, and because now there's legal stuff, because I guess there's certain states where they're like, dude, you're trying to save lives? Nah. Not in this state, you're not. We want our junkies to die. Fuck that. There's laws where like you can't sell Narcan. Could you imagine if my house got raided by like the feds and they're like, hey, You've been sending Narcan illegally. Get on the ground. Conspiracy to save lives. Fucking piece of shit. Goes on the news. Ryan Leone, a YouTuber that nobody's ever heard of, was arrested today for trying to save people's lives. What a piece of shit. Yeah. Go after the pedophiles. Go after the chomos. We can all agree on that. Lock those fuckers up. Kill them. Leave the drug people alone. And then furthermore, leave the people trying to send Narcan alone. Jeez. There's certain states that we can't do it. So now we have a list and we have every address where things need to go. And we need to like double check to make sure that it's illegal to send that, which is so fucking silly. And it's ridiculous. I've said fuck so many times now. So this one's not getting monetized. Well, why don't you just watch your language? I don't know. All right, let's get into the story. So where we are, so now we're in the breakdown phase. And what's interesting about this particular portion of the story, so this is the prelude before prison, before my third prison term. Third prison term was absolutely gnarly. I came out way more fucked up than before I went in, that's for sure. I'd never been in a riot before. I got to be in 12 of them this last time. It was pretty cool. Like, hey, let's experiment. Let's mix the protective custody guys with the solid guys and let's see what happens. Oh shit, they don't get along? That's weird. I totally thought you guys would be okay with each other. So we'll get into that. But you got to understand what my mental state was before I got to prison, because like going from this prelude into that nightmare is just, it's mind blowing. So last time we were talking about, the documentary Got Emotion. So this is September, October, fall of 2017, before I went to prison. I went to prison December 1st, 2017. So this is the few months leading up to it. And Zach and I, just to bring you back up, it helps me remember where we're at. We had originally tried to pitch Antoine Resurrection, a show to Spike TV, and I still think that would have been a great show. Antoine is an incredibly talented skater. He's like a down-to-earth guy. I think he's kind of crazy, or he was. I've seen footage of him lately, and he's doing really well again, skating really well. I think he got like his tattoos on his face removed, and he seems like he's really calmed down. And Antoine, if you're watching, I'm happy for you that things have turned around for you. You seem like you're in a good place. I thought that was going to be a good show. We would go to pitch it, and they would look at my bio, and they'd be like, wait a second, convicted drug dealer, international drug cartel. I'd be like, whoa, I just sold shit to a fat chick in East LA. They're like, whoa, hold on. Pimping and pandering. Baby on the way. You're like you're the perfect piece of shit. We should film something about you. I'm like, oh yeah, what do you want me to do? Juggle, bitch. So basically, but because we started pitching that show, and because my train wreck of a life was on paper, networks said that that's what would be interesting. And then Zach, who had already been fairly successful, he was running, like, he had his own TV station network. I don't know, it's like a obscure thing that's syndicated on different like satellite networks, and he had like a successful YouTube channel. He already had a lot of experience, and he was plugged in with a lot of people that were like not Hollywood or like television yet, but it was like they were in that limbo between like skateboarding obscurity to like mainstream television film. And a lot of those guys were really talented. So we started conceptualizing the documentary. I come up with the name Idiot Savant, because throughout my life, people are always like, dude, you are the stupidest smart person I've ever met. I don't even think I'm smart. I think that I went to prison, had a thesaurus and dictionary, and now I just pronounce big words. So I sound kind of stupid. But at least, hey, you know that I'm mispronouncing words because I read those words. I didn't just watch it on TV. You remember that. But, people would say that I was the stupidest smart person ever. So idiot savant, idiot obviously means idiot, and savant means that you're smart. So like a smart idiot. It's like kind of like a contradictory thing. Idiot Savant, the savage life of Ryan Leone. I think savage because, it was in Fear and Loathing. its title. And so I wanted to like maybe give like a little tip of the hat to Gonzo and to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And I think just the whole thing was presented, you know, as my life has just been kind of crazy. And as we talked about, we started finding that we actually had a lot of archival footage. We had footage from when I was a kid. My dad taped all that stuff. Then when I was 16, I had a video camera. I had a camcorder, and we used to film skateboarding. But when I got into drugs, we started filming that. I'm like, damn, let's get some coke. Let's film it. That'd be dope, huh? Well, what if your parents find it? Wouldn't that be incriminating? Fuck it. This shit looks dope. How do I look? Watch, get me. Oh, dude, you get that? You look pretty dope when you did that. I already know. So I had all this footage of stuff like that, like me, like keg parties, fist fights that I got in, skateboarding. I went to China when I was 17. I had that on film. And then Stephen Gabriel, the guy that I told you about last time, who's the current director of the documentary, we have a love-hate relationship. We really don't get along. We have the weirdest relationship, and I'll explain it so that, you know, it contextualizes it for you, because it's pretty fascinating just how our relationship is. But he was at the psych ward in Austin, Texas, and he was doing an experimental drug trial, you know, to get money. I don't know what they were going to give him, but, you know, something decent. And like, you sign your rights, like, well, if you die, your family can't sue us. It's like, I'm there. I'm really going to get $300 for this. They're like, you really are, if you survive. He's like, bargain. So he was waiting for that to be completed. And then remember, he had the archival footage in his mom's storage lockers, or what is it called when you have like a storage space? I don't know. You know, when it's happened to me a million times when I like get carted off to rehab, and then my family just throws all my shit in storage. So he had those tapes in storage. So anyway, back in California, I'm living with Jeff. I'm living in his 1-bedroom apartment. Karina is living with her parents. She's pregnant with our son. We found out that we were having a boy, but they said that he had a hole in his heart and that it might heal by itself. It might not. We didn't know what was going on. Karina essentially was living with me at this point. We weren't really getting along, though. We were fighting a lot. And this period, things just kind of started to shift for me. You know, before, I was basically just dumpster diving, looking for refries or looking for second chance lotto tickets. But now that I had the film stuff in production, because we had Max financing some of it, we had some of Zach's people financing some of it, like it was going to be like a real, you know, it was going to be like a real film. So I was on the phone all day, every day. You know, I would talk to Jimmels, the writer. I would talk to Zach, who was going to make his directorial debut. I would talk to other financiers. We were like, you know, I mean, I was going to be a producer of the film. So I was having like a pretty central role in its development and in the actual production. And we started filming a lot. We'd had these big, you know, they'd come up, they'd interview my family. We did all sorts of weird shit. Like, you know, Zach would be like, well, what are you doing Tuesday? I'm like, I'm getting my hair cut. He's like, I'm sending a crew up. And like, you know, I've been going to like the same barber since I was like 7, you know, like this little short Hispanic guy. And I always go there because I don't know if you have this, but, you know, sometimes when you have a barber that you've been going to your whole life, like only he can cut it a certain way. And he hardly speaks English. And like this whole film crew came in, and they're just like all like, you know, like in his space and shit, like with the camera, there's like lights everywhere. And like, I mean, they were like kind of tripping out, and like they were interviewing me as I was getting my hair cut. And, you know, they're like saying shit like, so, Ryan, when's the first time that you smoked crack cocaine? And I'm like, I don't know, probably when I was 18. Then I got to a point where I was smoking about $600 worth a day, and I used to peek out the window. That's probably when the chronic masturbating started. I don't know, though. Have you ever stuck shampoo bottles up your ass? I was like, only on crystal meth. barber's like cutting my hair, just like acting like he's not listening to this. And of course, that's not like really what was said, but who knows? It was probably something like pretty close. You know, maybe not the crack thing. Definitely the shampoo bottles up my ass when I'm smoking crystal meth. That's for sure. So Steve ends up coming out, and he's going to live. He's not going to live, but he's going to stay with Jeff at Jeff's house. So like I'm staying, Jeff had a 2-bedroom condo. I was in one bedroom. Jeff was in the other bedroom. Steve was going to sleep on the couch. And the last time that I had seen Steve, I've explained this before, he had come out. I found Steve years and years and years ago when YouTube had first come out, and I was working for Spike TV. I came up with the idea for Cop Busters, where I wanted to get crooked cops in trouble. It was going to be like the show Cops, but instead of criminals getting busted, it was cops getting busted. Like, you know, we'd set up cops, like we'd put like, you know, prostitutes in cars and like have them get pulled over. Be like, ma'am, you don't have proper registration. I'll suck your dick. Okay. And then she starts sucking her, you know, the cop's dick, and like we jump out. We're like, it was gonna be like punked, like, you're on Cop Busters, fucking pig. And like, you know, I really thought like, and when I came up with it, I was like really into crack. Like really, like I thought that we could do this legally somehow, you know, and like that's how I pitched it. I was literally like crackhead when I was pitching. I was like, yeah, you know, like, well, I came up with the idea, right? Because we're always watching TV, and then the show Cops will come on, and I'm always telling my friends, I'm like, why do we want to watch cops busting people? You know what I want to see? I want to see people busting cops. And I think my energy just kind of like freaked out the execs at Spike, and they're just like, yeah, if you make the pilot, yeah, we might be interested. I think they just wanted me like out of there because I was like so passionate about it. I was like, we'll start a movement, and then we'll do Fed busters, and we'll start busting FBI. We'll fucking take over, fuck law enforcement. I'm just like, okay, Ryan. You know, and then I left, and then like my connection at Spike would always call me. He'd be like, hey, bud, you gotta tone it down a notch, okay? He'd always talk to me like that. He'd talk to me very condescending. You gotta tone it down a notch, bud. You're freaking out the senior staff. These guys aren't used to dealing with people with your kind of energy that have acne, okay? All right, Adam. I'm sorry. He's like, no problem. No problem. Cheers. Hang up. So as soon as they basically told me that if I came up with a pilot, you know, and pilots are expensive. It costs us like $10,000 to make that pilot, but I was selling drugs at the time, and I was selling a lot of drugs, so I was making good money. I was probably making $10,000 a week. So I decided to put money into the pilot. The first thing that I needed was an editor and a filmer. I went on YouTube to try to find somebody that could, you know, meet my aesthetic. And I came across these really, really, to this day, I don't know if you guys know who Larry Clark is. He's the guy that did the movie Kids. He did Bully, the movie that Nick Stahl is in. I love that movie. I think Nick was amazing in it. He did Another Day in Paradise with James Woods and Melanie Griffith. And I always thought that Gabriel was kind of like Larry Clark in the early days. You know, he did these really, really, what I thought were artsy videos of like Skid Row, LA. You know, they were like really weird. It would show some like homeless lady, and they had like a fisheye lens on her, and she'd be like, you know, psychiatry is a drug oriented religion. Yeah, and they're coming down here, and they're having sex with me, and they're burning me. They're setting me on fire. They're burning my vagina. I swear to God, that's how it was. I mean, I will like literally post this video. I'll post that on Patreon so you can see the first thing that I ever saw of Gabriel. Gabriel, I just saw it and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. That's back when I was a drug dealer. I remember I went to a rave in San Francisco, probably like in 2006, maybe New Year's of '07, I want to say actually. New Year's of 2007, and I was on a bunch of acid. This is back when I had those Quaaludes. I had like 5,000 Quaaludes. I brought some up there, and I had given my friend Kevin a vial of like this really good L. Remember I made fun of that? Like when people call acid L, and here I am doing it. What a phony. I gave him a vial of this acid, and like, because we were at this rave, I think String Cheese Incident was playing there. They had like jam bands and stuff like that as well. And anyway, make a long story short, that particular night, I'd given him this vial of acid, and I'm like, yeah, just give it back to me. He went and he dosed like the entire rave. Like, I'm looking and like everybody's walking around tripping balls on this acid, and I wanted to take it. I'm like, Kevin, do you have my vial? We were just talking about this the other day. He's helping me like with some of my social media stuff. He's helping me like send out. He's the guy that's helping me like as my assistant right now. And I'm like, what's up with the vial? It's empty. He's like, dude, I'm sorry I gave it to everyone. I'm tripping so hard. And I'm like, you're a piece of shit. What the fuck? Let me see that. So I got it and I sucked on the vial. Well, I've done that a couple times. Like when you are out of acid and you just have the vial to kind of like suck on. So you don't know how much acid you're taking. And like an hour later, I was tripping way too hard, and sometimes when you're in a crowded place like a rave, it can be really overwhelming. And I remember I took a couple quaaludes, and Jenny and I left. I was with her back then, and we actually were walking down the street and someone had gotten shot. We didn't see the person get shot, but they were just like, there was like a dead body and there was like a bunch of police standing over it. And that's pretty heavy when you're on acid, but the quaalude took it down to a degree. And I remember when we were up there in San Francisco, we had gotten like a really expensive hotel room. We were staying with that party that we were at was like a private rave. And it was just for like, drug dealers, pretty much like people that were either like in the EDM scene or in the drug dealing scene. It wasn't like some huge rave. There's probably like maybe 150 people there. And they had like bands like String Cheese Incident. They have stuff like that there. And I remember showing people at the hotel because we had all these different rooms, and I showed them some of Stephen Gabriel's stuff, and I was like, look at this guy. What do you think? And this is, the kind of crowd where it's like festival raver type people, but like a lot of really artistic people as well, taggers, people that were into graph, all that kind of stuff, DJs. And I remember everybody seeing his work and just seeing what I saw in it. They saw talent, and I still maintain to this day that he's like a completely undiscovered talent. He's a genius guy, just the way that he puts his short form documentaries together is unlike anything I've ever seen. It reminds me of Larry Clark, but it's almost more raw, I want to say. And he had done those short form documentaries about me. On this channel, there's 2 videos that shows me like shooting heroin and talking. I'm telling the story about stabbing the skinhead. And then there's another one where I don't even know what I'm doing. I just like nod out and Jenny like takes the needle out of my arm. He did those. So you can get like a little example of his work. And he did that years ago. That was, it's like probably 15 years old at this point. So what was the point of talking about all this? Oh, how I had met Gabriel, and then we had a falling out, and there's a lot of footage of all that. So with all the footage we had of me growing up, all the stuff of my camcorder when I was 16, and then all the stuff that Gabriel had done. Plus we had a ton of photos. My first Fed case, we had that all on video. And then I found a journal from my first relationship with Kate. And it was a journal that we had made when I was living with my parents and she was living at a sober living. Or maybe it was vice versa. Maybe I was at a sober living and she was living at my parents. I don't know. It was one or the other. And we couldn't sleep together, like at night, one of us had to go to the sober living. And what we used to do is we would trade journals every night. Like we had this one journal and we'd put collages in it. There's like photos of me, like of her like snorting coke off my dick. It's like, it's pretty romantic, it's feel good type stuff. And we would write each other poems, and every night we would trade the journal back and forth. So I'd give it to her and she'd write me like a love letter. Then the next night I would have it and I'd write her one back, and it makes this whole story. It's actually pretty cool. I might publish that as like a, it's like a book. But in the middle of looking for all this old footage, we found that. And, it was pretty cool. Like we found this and it's just full of a bunch of gems. So we kept finding stuff like that. I had a couple old cell phones that had pretty crazy footage on it. And, some of them had broke. They had like got water damage. Zach actually paid like $2,000 to get some like military grade, like technology firm to like go through and get all of my media off my old cell phone. So the point is we have a ton of archival and B-roll stuff, and we started doing all the interviews. So we flew Steve out, because remember, all of the footage that he had was on mini DV tapes, and they were on a deck. So we had to get this deck that would convert the mini DVs to digital. And Zach was paying for all these bills. Plus he was paying me just so that I could have pocket money so that I could survive during this period. So Gabriel flies out. This is after we had done the funeral thing where I'd gone, and I was like, another devastating tally mark in the wake of addiction's destructive path, some like super corny shit like that. Looking back on it, like at the time, I thought it was really good footage. And then like shortly after, I was like, that shit was whack. And now looking back, I think it's good footage again, just because I can put it into context. Like I was trying to make it be some like emotional footage, and it looks pretty ridiculous. So he ends up flying out. He flew to LA. Now, the first time that we had met up, I found him on that's what I was trying to get to. I'd found him on YouTube, and then I contacted him, and right off the bat, him and I didn't really see eye to eye. He's like very introverted, and I'm very extroverted, like I'll say anything. If there's people that are very private, and there's people like me where like I'll just like stick a finger in my ass, and I'm like, damn dude, my asshole smells like straight shit right now. And people be like, oh, that's weird. Like he's the kind of guy that would like secretly stick his finger in his ass and like put his shirt over and smell it, and just kind of like make like a bad look. The type. Like, what's wrong, Steve? Nothing. He's that kind of guy. Very like quiet, maybe a little damaged. I don't know. And the first time that he came to like film Copbusters, he saw me, and I had 50 pounds of mushrooms on my pool table. This huge like stack of psychedelic mushroom, 50 fucking pounds. That's a lot. It's like 50 grand worth of mushrooms. I had a 32 Cobra gun in my waistline. Like Jenny and I would get in these insane fights. I'm projectile vomiting everywhere. Like I'm like, shut up, you fucking bitch. And then I'm just like, bleh! I was like some like junkie exorcist shit, and he like saw me. He's like, oh my God. He's like, Jesus, like what kind of circus is this? And he just started filming all of it. And we got a lot of good footage. I mean, like I said, that like pretty much makes up the core of the documentary. A lot of that footage is priceless. I mean, it's like cinema verite, meaning it tells a story just by itself, just by the footage. We could just play that period as a film, and it would work as a film, because it just kind of shows like what my day-to-day was like. It's actually like very intimate portraiture. And at the end, I'm smoking $600 worth of crack. You probably lived there for a week. We did the pilot for Copbusters, and then I got in my head, like I think I went to Jenny and I was like, we should kidnap Steve. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, let's make the motherfucker edit stuff. It'll be like a fantasy factory. Anything I can think of will make the motherfucker do. And she's like, Ryan, are you? I'm like, no. I'm thinking clearly, baby. This is how we're going to get big. We're going to get rich and famous, just making the little motherfucker work for us. And she's like, and how are you going to make him work for you? I was like, I have a gun. And I literally pulled the gun out to Steve and was trying to threaten him, telling him like, I know your address back in LA. If you don't work for us, if you don't make all this content, I'm going to kill you. And I'm plugged with the Mexican mafia. I was telling him, this is not true, but I was telling him that. And basically Jenny helped him escape my clutches. She like gave him money for a train ride out of there. She's like, I'm so sorry, Steve. He's just so fucking out of control. He's so unhinged. Here's money for the train. And she helped him escape pretty much. So I hadn't seen him since that. And then we connected on the phone, and he came back. So now the second time that I met up with Steve, I'm living with Jeff, and I'm kind of on a different trip. I'm shooting Suboxone. That's about all I'm doing. Karina and I are in a tumultuous relationship because I'm still mad at her from what she had done to me when she was a drunk, but and she's not drinking anymore. So we just have this very bitter and volatile relationship. And I just got out of prison maybe a few months before. I was in good shape at the time. I was eating healthy, but I was incredibly stressed out because I was trying to just do so many things at once. I was always on the phone. And when I get too much on my plate, I start getting like really aggressive and agitated, you know? I'm like not the kind of guy that does well with stress. So he gets there, and at first it's cool, you know, just like, you know, we can tolerate each other for about a day, and then we start getting, we don't get along. So what happened is he came over, and Jeff, my best friend, had spent a lot of time obsessive. He's very like organized, and he had archived all of my footage. He'd organized it by like chronological order, time, date, like, okay, this goes into this part of his life. Like you could go 1985 and it would have all the pictures and photos from that time, and it was like different subcategories. It was meticulously organized. So when Steve got there, I'm like, hey, I want you to look through the computer and I want you to get acclimated with the footage so you can get familiar with it. He's like, yeah, for sure. He's like, hey, I'm going to go out to the bar and get some pussy. I'm out of here. I'm like, what the fuck? You're here to work, dude. No, you don't need pussy. Here, I'll pay $10 for Pornhub Premium, dude. Just look up ass licking lesbian porn. He's like, not everybody likes that, you fucking extrovert. Okay, whatever, Steve. So so he ends up like, we're already arguing, you know, the first night because he wants to go out to the bars and I want him to stay and work. He's like a couple years younger than me. I think I'm 34. He's probably like 32. I want to say maybe he's 30. I don't know. Maybe we're the same age. Maybe he's older than me. Actually, I don't even know. He's like one of those people where you can never tell his age. He's probably like in his late 40s. I think he's like a year or two older or younger. I don't even know. Pretty much close to the same age as me. So so he goes to sleep, and you know we're already bickering that first night. The next morning, I wake up, and again I'm overworked. I'm stressed out. I'm like expending way too much energy at this time, and I'm hardly sleeping. I'm sleeping like an hour or two a night. When I get like too overwhelmed, I just can't sleep anymore. I have a problem sleeping anyway. You know, I just have these like outlandish dreams of like medieval butt fucking conga lines with like, you know, knight uniforms on and horses that talk and butt fuck. So the next morning I wake up and Steve is like whistling. Now, anyone that's ever been to jail or prison knows the whistling is the most annoying shit in the entire world. I can't stand when people whistle. It drives me nuts. If there's ever a whistler in prison or jail, they get smashed. Have you ever noticed that? Like if like you're in county and someone's like, and then like within like 20 minutes, their fucking brains are smashed out and there's like puddle of blood coming out of their dome. People are just like, that's what happens when you whistle, bitch. All right, let's go play some spades, you know? And so I wake up to him whistling. It's a no from the get-go, you know? And I'm just like, I'm upstairs. Karina's downstairs. She's like, you know, she would always wake up and she watches the news first thing and drinks coffee and watches the news. So she's sitting downstairs in her bathrobe. I walk downstairs. He has his shirt off. He's wearing boxers. The slit of his boxers is open. His little dong, his little penis head is sticking out. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck? And he's like, hey, brother. And he's like, you know, flipping pancakes and shit. He's like, hey, homeboy. I was like, you know, he sounds like some like gay chef or something. What the fuck? What is this shit? What is this, dude? You don't have a shirt on? You have your boxers on? Your fucking cock is hanging out? You don't see that my pregnant girlfriend's right there? You piece of shit. What's up with you? He's like, nah, brother, I'm just flipping pancakes. Like, and I swear, he's the kind of guy that's trying to antagonize me. Now, that might just be in my crazy convict paranoid mind, but I feel like he's the kind of guy that pushes buttons intentionally, and I just lose it. And I go up and I grab the pan that, you know, with like, I think he was doing pancakes or maybe it was bacon, whatever it was, and I just toss it against the wall, and it but makes a big crashing noise. And Karina's like is startled and jumps up and she's like, what the hell? And I go up to him and I was like, look, if you ever disrespect my baby mama again, I will fuck your ass up. I will fuck you up, Steve. And he's like shaking because he knows I'm serious. You know, I'm a really nice guy and I'm a straight bitch and I'm a pussy and I can't fight. But look, man, when I get mad, I get mad. Like I get mad and I just whip my dick out and start jerking off. I'm just like, fuck. No, I'm not like that. That'd be crazy though. I wonder if there's people that's like some disorder. When you get mad, you masturbate compulsively. I masturbate compulsively anyway, so I probably have done that. Just like not while in the middle of arguing with someone. Seriously, I got really mad at him. I yelled at him to the point where he was shaking. And he like, it's our fights are so like immature and ridiculous. He's like, fine, and he like runs up to his room and like slams the door. Oh yeah, she's staying in Jeff's room, and Jeff was staying on the couch because this was like a phase where Jeff basically, I don't want to get too into it, you know, to front Jeff off, but he was basically narcoleptic at the time, which means like he'd just be like talking, he'd be like, yeah, that's and he'd just like fall asleep. He wasn't on heroin either. He was going through something, but it wasn't heroin. And he would just be like talking, and everyone would be like Zach would come over and be like, what's up with Jeff? Because Jeff would be like engaged in a conversation, be like talking to us, and then he would just like fall out and like crack his head on the table, and people would be like, Jesus, and they're like, are you okay, man? He'd be like, yeah, I'm cool. That was just a weird period that he went through. Like we thought he had narcolepsy. But so like Steve ran up and he's like, fine, and he like slammed the door. And then Zach comes over, and Zach was always like chipper, you know. Zach, I miss that dude, man. It sucks that we had a falling out. I really do miss Zach. Like, he's a good guy, and the reason we had a falling out is all my fault. He didn't do anything wrong. He hooked me up, took care of me, was nice to me. But as this series will go on, I start going and like having a mental breakdown. But he was always like chipper, and like he showed up with like a box of donuts, and he had like a coffee mug. He's like, how's it going? And Karina's just sitting there kind of like, Ryan's being an asshole again. He's like, what do you mean? Ryan, what is she talking about? Why is there pancake batter on the wall? What's going on here, guys? And I'm like, dude, Gabriel had his fucking dick out and he was like cooking pancakes in front of my chick. It's not cool. Ryan, what did you do? I'm like, I didn't do anything. And Karina's like, that's not true. Steve's petrified of him. He ran upstairs and he won't come out. Like Zach, like literally, like Zach, Jeff, and Karina like had to go upstairs, and like Steve was like in the other room, and Zach's like, Steve, it's Zach. Hey, buddy, what's going on? He's like, I don't want to talk. I'm listening to music. And like we'd hear some like goth metal, like going, like, who listens to shit like that? And Zach, Steve, we got to talk, bud. We got a big shoot to do today. Now, the shoot that he was talking about, I don't know if I'd mentioned it. Zach was friends with the owners of Inked magazine, and they had agreed to give me a cover of Inked. I was going to be on the cover of Inked, even though I like don't have enough tattoos for it. And what I had done is I had called around different tattoo shops and said that I was going to be on the cover of Inked, and I was looking for a tattoo sponsor, somebody that would hook me up with tattoos for free, and we'd get them a spread in Inked magazine and Urban Inked. We had both of those, Urban Ink and Inked. We had both of those tattoo magazines that were willing to do pieces on me. Urban Ink wasn't going to give me a cover, but Inked was. So I found this guy, Sergio, at Sling and Ink Tattoo in Santa Barbara. Super cool. Southsider. Hey, what's up, dog? I'd be willing to sponsor you. If you can get me in the spread with Inked magazine and shit like that, dog. That'd be fucking tight, dog. I could like, use the exposure, dog. Yeah. Oh, serio? All right, dog. Sounds good, fool. So he decided to sponsor me. So this tattoo right here, I don't know if you can see it. That's Sharon Tate. That's who died in the Manson murders. That was supposed to represent that like fame killed her because she was up at that house on Benedict Canyon. And then that's a Shepard Fairey, like obey image, make love, not war. And then he like filled in some of this existing color work that I already had. And he was going to sleeve my other arm. So Gabriel, one of his responsibilities was to digitize the existing mini DVs. One of his other responsibilities was to start filming B-roll, and like our first big shoot was going to be, at this tattoo shop. We were gonna just like, I was going to start getting this piece done, and they were going to film me being interviewed while I got tattooed. We thought that would make a good, interview. Me getting tattooed, me getting my hair cut, me getting my butthole bleached, like my face and like some metal like thing, just like with my ass up in the air, and someone like some Asian chicks like bleaching it with like marinade brush and shit. No, not that part, but yeah, the Inked magazine thing's true. And then so we drove over there and we did this big production, and I started getting that tattoo. And Gabriel, once again, Gabriel's already mad at me. Eventually Zach got him to come out, go on the shoot. And at this point, my dad was starting to help me out a lot again. One of the things that he did is he rented me a minivan, like a big black minivan that that would help lug all the film equipment around. So everybody piled up in this minivan. Zach took his own BMW to the tattoo shop. And we basically stayed there all day, and people from Inked came and they took a bunch of photos, and we just started, filming for the documentary of these interviews. It took multiple sessions, and Steve was kind of like he'd film a little bit. We probably had like 6 or 7 cameras on me. I'll make one of the photos from that the cover for this particular video. But Steve would just like film for a little bit, and then he would just leave. He'd like disappear for hours, and then he'd come back like eating some like huge burrito. And we'd be like, Steve, where'd you go? Oh, just went to go get a burrito. It's like, dude, you're gone for 3 hours. What are you talking about? So we started beefing with him from the get-go. And like, one of the main reasons is, first of all, I liked stylistically, I thought that he was a great filmer, good with cinematography. He just had a really good eye, great vision, great artistry. I still believe that, we love-hate relationship. I love Steve. We had a great conversation 2 nights ago, like getting along fine. We were planning on doing acid together to bond before COVID-19. And I was going to like do a live on acid and be like, I'm on acid. No, I really wasn't going to. Well, no, I think I was going to. I don't know. I'm a schizo. Sorry. But the point is like back in that period, I wanted him because of all the stylistic stuff and the artistry, but I also wanted as many DV tapes. So he had already gotten them. We just didn't have the deck to digitize it yet. And we were waiting for that. So while that was going on, he was like helping do some of the filming, and this lasted for a few days. While that was going on, that's when Penthouse had asked for the photographs because they were going to run that feature article on me that Seth Ferrante was going to write. So all of those ducks started getting in line, and Gabriel and I kept getting in fights. He asked me for a Suboxone for a piece of one, and I tried to give him a teeny one because he wasn't on any opiates, and I'm like, you're taking too much. It's going to make you sick. Trina's like, yeah, that shit made me really sick. Steve's like, don't treat me like a child, Ryan. Don't tell me how much I can do. Give me a half of a strip. I'm like, you're going to do a half of an 8 milligram strip and you have no tolerance to it? You're like going to die, dude. You're going to be projectile vomiting for like 3 days. He's like, I hate how you condescend me. I hate how you talk down to me, Ryan. Give me that. And he took a whole strip, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, dude. So the next day we were supposed to go back and film more tattoo stuff. So this like sleeve, it took, I don't know, like 10 hours probably, like just the Sharon Tate piece alone, that was like, I don't know, 5 hours or something, maybe longer. So there was a lot of filming to be done. It was over a 2 or 3 day period. After he took that strip, he was completely useless. He was literally crawling around Jeff's condo, like puking on himself. And he's just like, why did you do that to me, Ryan? You're so irresponsible. I'm like, shut the fuck. Steve, are you serious? Like, I told you not to do that. I knew that you'd become useless like this. And so, back when I had originally met Steve, way, 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 way back in the day, this was back in like 2007, I had already had this grandiose delusion that Paul Harper and I were going to really make something of ourselves. I thought I was going to be the writer and he was going to be like the director, and we'd go on to make a bunch of cult films together. We had that dream, and we'd always talk about it. We're like, yeah, we'll take mushrooms at Sundance and we'll wear like stupid matching tuxedos like in Dumb and Dumber, and no one will know we're on mushrooms, like pipe dreams that dumb kids have. And at this point, I touched on this in the last video. At this point, Paul had gotten addicted to dust off. He had relapsed. So he got sober for 5 years. He got into, like, when I knew him, he was homeless. He lived with that girl, Stacy. Like, you know, he was like, she was supporting him, but he was homeless before he met her. And then when they broke up, he was homeless again. He had a new girlfriend named Chelsea. And I would just watch him his entire time that I knew him before he got sober. He didn't have shit. He was either homeless, or like at one point he got a job working at a hotel where like he worked the graveyard shift and they gave him a room, and him and his girlfriend just smoked crack every day, and she had a heart attack. All sorts of stuff happened. And so I just never knew him to have anything. When I was in prison, 2008 to 2013, in 2010, right? It might have been 09 or 2. I think it was 10. He had written me a letter when he was doing his amends for Alcoholics Anonymous, because that's part of the program. And he had basically apologized for everything that he had done to me, that he had stolen heroin from me and just a bunch of stuff that he was making amends for. And after he had made his amends, we became really close. He became one of my best friends, you know, and he was really good to me. You know, he'd write me all the time. He'd send me photos, especially when I went to the hole. He would get really upset because he knew that I was suffering and going through it, and he'd send me pictures. He was a good friend. You know, I said one time he sent me like $6 when I was at Lompoc on a violation. And like everyone at Lompoc was like, mate, huh, that's what kind of people you're fucking with out there, Leone? People that can only send $6. It's like the dude didn't have a job. You know, for him, that was like sacrificing like a pack of cigarettes. You know, he would smoke like cheap cigarettes, and like, you know, it meant more to me him sending that $6 than somebody that sent like $300 and it didn't affect them, because like he made a sacrifice just to make me happier. And I ended up spending the $6 on email credit so I could talk to him anyway. But it's just, you know, it's the thought that counts. So he had gotten sober for 5 years, and he was sponsoring people. And during that time, he'd gotten a good job editing for like a military company, like doing editing work for, I don't know, I forget what he was doing, but it had something to do with the military and something to do with video editing. And he had gotten a really great girlfriend who he had up until he died. One of my best friends, you know, I love her to death. She's like a sister to me. And he had gotten a car, and his parents and him, their relationship had soured, and he was basically estranged, you know, and he'd made up with his family. So I'd watch him go from being like a homeless drug addict alcoholic, having nothing, no family, no car, no job, nothing, to having everything, you know, a really great girl that really loved him. He had a car. He had, he had his own place. Well, I mean, he had like 6 roommates, but he'd never had anything like that when he was using. And, you know, I've told you the story. In 2015, he called me, and he had said he was crying. You know, we talked all the time. You know, I got sober for 3 years, and he had been sober for 5 years. And he called me while I was like just about 3 years sober, and he was crying. You know, and he's like, I relapsed. And I was like, are you serious? Because like, you know, he had sponsees below him. I said, what happened? And he explained to me that he had gone to get a root canal, and he told the dentist that he was a junkie. He said, do not give me opiate pain medication. And the dentist was like, if I don't give you Percocet, you're going to be very uncomfortable. Paul's like, fuck, okay, give it to me, you know? And he even told his girl, he's like, okay, like, just make sure I take this as prescribed. Well, when he took the Percocet, just to kind of to quell the pain, it does predictably what it does to any true junkie, and it woke the monster back up. And he relapsed. And when he called me, he was shooting meth, he was shooting heroin, he was smoking crack, he was drinking. I mean, he's the most hardcore drug addict I've ever met. I mean, besides myself. I mean, he's like a severe drug issue. And, you know, I had paid for him to come from Monterey, where he was living, down to LA, where I was. I was with my ex, who we'll call Casey. That's not her real name. I was with her, and her and I were having problems. It was right at the end of our relationship. And I paid for him to come down to take a train. I was like, I love you. I got you. Don't trip. I'll pay for you to come down here. I bought him Suboxone. I bought him Valium, and I was going to let him kick heroin and everything on my couch. I got him Librium, all that. Clonidine. He came down, and as soon as he got off the train, he got in the car with us. He came back to our complex, and he ran away. I literally had to go drive around Skid Row in downtown Los Angeles at night looking for him, you know? And I found him, and then he'd run away again. I'd bring him back. He stole money from us. It was just a really ugly situation because it wasn't him. It was just, he was in full-blown addiction again. And he started like shooting up in his neck. He was shooting coke in his neck at our condo. My girl at the time had been sober 2 years. I was coming up on 3 years, and she was very upset that he was shooting up at her house. And I'm just like, I didn't know what to do. I had good intentions with bringing him down. She ended up leaving me. It was the first time she left me. She left me like 2 or 3 times. It was the first time. It was like the beginning of the end for us. And she ended up going up to Santa Barbara. She took the train from LA to Santa Barbara to stay with some friends. And so I drove up there after her, and I brought Paul with me. I was basically going to pawn him off to Jeff, you know, I like called Jeff. I'm like, look, man, like he's destroying my relationship. You live alone. Like Jeff had his own condo by himself. I'm like, can you just like do something with him? You know, I tried to get him off drugs, and this is what's happening. And now my chick just left me. Like, what's up? And Jeff's like, yeah, I got you. Cause they were friends too, you know? So driving up to Santa Barbara, Paul drank almost a whole gallon of vodka. I mean, he had already started earlier in the day, but he was drinking a gallon all day, like out of a plastic cheap vodka bottle. We get to Santa Barbara, and me and that girl, Casey, were fighting on the phone. And basically she was telling me that it was a wrap. She's like, it's over. You know, I don't want to be with you anymore. And I'm pretty sure that I was crying on the phone. I mean, breakups are just horrible. You know, I'm like any other human. I mean, I just don't take well to them. And this was a serious relationship, and I was heartbroken over it. And I go back into Jeff's house. Paul was in there. You know, I got up to Jeff's house in Santa Barbara, put Paul inside. I went out and I talked to her on the phone. And she was telling me that she wasn't going to get back with me. And she's like, it's over. Like, she's like, you're bringing bad energy into my life. She's like, you know, the reason that I was with you in the first place is you got me sober. You know, you were into fitness, into like, you know, eating healthy, living a good lifestyle. We traveled, we went to concerts, we had a really good life. So this isn't what I want. I don't want you bringing junkies to our condo, you know, like basically, you know, polluting like our good Zen zone there. Fuck that. And I was like crying, and I went back into Jeff's, and I was like just sitting on the couch, like, you know, kind of like burying my face in my hand. I look up, and Paul's standing above me, and he's just smiling. Now, this other guy, not Jeff, but this other guy that I'm not friends with anymore, was filming Paul above me. Now, Paul always made, if you ever looked at his channel, he always made like Jackass, CKY type videos. So I already knew that he was going to slap me. You know, after everything I'd done, I paid for him to come down. I bought him Suboxone, bought him a Valium, bought him Librium, Clonidine, basically a kick pack. My chick left me over it. And he's all wasted, and he's trying to make a funny video of slapping me. And I just look at him, and I have tears in my eyes, you know, and I'm just like, dude, if you hit me, I'm going to fuck you up, Paul. Seriously. And he just goes, not like that. You know, he slaps me like that, you know, not backhand. He just goes, like that. And I get up, and I just slap him back. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? And he's like, what the fuck? He's like mocking me. So I push him against the wall, and I like have him held against the wall. And he's like talking shit. He's all drunk. He's like, fuck you. He's like, you think you're so cool because you're buff. No, he didn't say that. I just felt like that'd be cool to throw that in there. But I was big at the time. I was lifting weights and everything. And that's the point. I didn't want to hurt him. So I'm basically holding him against the wall, and he turns around, and he's like trying to pin me against the wall, but I'm way strong. He's like probably like 130 pounds at the time. So I'm holding him and like trying to like keep him off of me. And I'm looking at these guys, and one of these guys is still filming, and Jeff's just kind of like doesn't know what to do. He's just kind of like, I mean, he knows that Paul and I have gotten in like a million little, you know, tussles like this. Is that, can I say that? Tussles? We've gotten in little fights like this before. I say, come on, guys, can you please get him off of me? And he goes, oh, you want them to get you off of me? Who's got who in the corner, bitch? And as soon as he said bitch, I lost it. I lost my cool. I grabbed him and I threw him on the ground. But what happened is he hit his head against a coffee table, like on the corner of a coffee table, and he split his head open. I mean, there's blood everywhere. And I kind of just like saw red, and I just started like, beating him up. A lot bigger than him. I was sober. And so then my friends jumped in. Then Jeff, like they got us off each other. Paul was so drunk he didn't even get a punch back. And let me tell you something. Paul is a gnarly dude. Like Paul could if me and him were just going heads up sober, he'd beat the shit out of me. I just happened to be sober and I was in good shape at the time. It's the only reason I won. He was just completely shit-faced. And what ended up happening that night is they kicked him out. They're like, get out of here, motherfucker. And he just left. It was raining. He's like, ah. And it's like some crazy, like, horror movie shit. He was like, ah, like some villain. He just was like, ah, and like, just like scattered out of the house. He's like, took off, blood trailing. And we're just like, what a weirdo. I remember I talked to his girl, who's now his widow. We talked all night because she was having real problems with him and I was having real problems with my chick, and we kind of just consoled each other. Next day, I get a call from her, from his chick, and she's like, hey, how are you? I'm like, okay. And she's like, Paul's in jail. I'm like, what? For what? So I guess he had gone to the hospital, and then he I think he got a staple in his head from the coffee table incident, and then he was walking down the street and he saw someone that had a MacBook, and he just went up to him and grabbed the MacBook and started running down the street all drunk and tripped, and he had this MacBook in his hand, and he got felony grand theft. He got bailed out, and him and I had like a falling out for a while. We made up, good friends of mine, like Jeff and I have had a few falling outs. All my like closest friends I have falling outs with, and then we make up later. We had a falling out for a while, and what ended up happening is we made up at some point, and he went from the crystal meth, heroin, crack thing to alcohol and dust off. Now, dust off, I don't know if you've ever done it. Dust off's like what you spray a keyboard with. You can huff it and it makes you talk like, and it's kind of like a nitrous oxide high. I've done it. I mean, most druggies have done stuff like that. It never did much for me. It's kind of just a gimmicky kind of high. But Paul started doing 10, 15 bottles a day. He got legitimately addicted to it. And like it was making scabs on his brain. Like, he battled with this for years. He totaled 3 cars. He was gnarly. He'd be driving on the freeway and he'd just take a fat blast of dust off and he'd flip the car 3 times. He totaled 3 different cars. And it was really sad because he was losing his mind. He had a cognitive slip, and he just stopped being the same Paul. He got very forgetful. He would have these like manic episodes. He would hallucinate. He'd get off it, and then he got very suicidal, getting on and off it. And I was there for him the whole time. I spent a lot of time on the phone with him. Like I said in the last video, he had called me a week before he died. And he said that, he pretty much said that he would have killed himself if it wasn't for me on a particular occasion. And I believe that. He's crazy enough where, he would do it. Not narcissistic. He's not full of himself. He's just a legitimately gnarly guy. He's like the kind of guy like where we jump off huge rocks, like 100-foot cliffs and shit. And he'd do like, double backflips off it. He always pushed stuff to the extreme. That's what his mom was talking about at the funeral too. Even as a little kid, he would do that. You know, he'd jump off their roof, like do flips off the roof as like a 4-year-old, 5-year-old. I mean, he's a hardcore guy. And the reason that I bring all this up is when I had met Steve Gabriel, the director of my documentary, the guy that I was having problems with in this particular story, back then in 07, I made a company called Twomp Productions. Jeff did art for it, and Paul and Steve are basically like the film guys, and I was the writer. It's called Twomp Productions. I named it because Twomp is a 20 bag of drugs, and I had basically come up from a 20 bag of drugs. Like that's how like my drug dealing stuff pretty much started. And we always had that dream that together we were going to really make something together. Me, Steve, and Paul, and Jeff. Jeff was going to be an executive producer on Idiot Savant, and Steve was going to be an executive producer and one of the editors. And Paul was a really artistic guy. He was still making amazing art, you know, paintings, and he was still very artistic. He's the kind of guy that couldn't not have creative expression. And so I was trying to be nice and include him in the film, you know. I wanted him to edit some of it and be an executive producer. And we'll get into what happened with that in the next episode. You know, ultimately, you know, Paul's passed away. That's why I started the Narcan initiative, the Paul Project, just in his honor. But, you know, we had a really nasty falling out over this documentary, and this episode was setting up that. I'm donating some of my points, some of my the profit that I'll make off the film to his ex, not ex, his widow, the love of his life. They were engaged. They were just about to get married. He always wanted to take care of her, and she went on to be a very successful accountant. You know, she's doing really well right now, and she's really made something of herself. And she was basically taking care of Paul at the end. And there's no doubt that they, you know, they both loved each other very, very much. And I know that Paul would always tell me that he was a burden on her, you know, because he cognitively, he just wasn't the same anymore. It was really sad. The dust off really fucked him up. It gave him brain damage. And he always told me how much he wanted to take care of her. You know, he's like, I just wish that I could contribute and I could take care of her as well as she, as she would take care of him. So I thought that by donating, I'm still making him an executive producer, you know, even though he passed away. And I'm going to donate some of the proceeds that I'm getting. I'm donating them to her, so she'll get residual. And the whole concept behind that, in you know, I wrote and read the eulogy at his funeral, and I explained this. You know, it's like I know how much he wanted to take care of her, and I feel like if she's always getting residual payments for my film, you know, every time she gets paid for it, even if it's not a lot, even if it's checks for like a couple $100 or even whatever it ends up being, monthly residuals or whatever it ends up being, whatever the deal looks like, I know that every time she gets even a cent from it, you know, she can smile because Paul, you know, is taking care of her from up above. And that's why I did that. All right. Well, we'll get into it next episode. Thank you guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out patreon.com/Ryan Leone. I appreciate you all, even the peasants on YouTube. Thank you, and Palabra.